Hi there, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawwalker, your host, and today we're going to be taking a look at this new album called 9 from Australian psych rock outfit Pond. A friend of mine introduced me to Pond in 2017 when their album The Weather dropped. They had said it was an incredibly underrated album, and I gave it a listen, and while I didn't necessarily hold it in the same high praises, I could get where they were coming from. I dug myself into their catalog a bit and found myself enjoying a decent amount of material. Maybe not so much that they were like a daily listen, but enough for them to be memorable. So now I find myself in 2021. They've dropped their 9th album, appropriately titled 9, and it's taking a lot of the formulas they had worked on their last album, Tasmania, and kind of blending them a bit with their earlier and, older material, as well as a lot with like classic and modern shoegaze sounds. A lot of this album reminds me of material off of the last A Place to Bury Strangers record, and some of it even toys with some like Bowie-like sounds. It's a really interesting listen, so let's get into it. Track 1 is Song for Agnes. This track opens up with a female vocalist that sets up for a pretty big explosive drop into this really funky, dancey track. The drums swing and the synth work is pretty killer. Also, the singing on this track hits this raw section that reminds me a lot of the vocals from like an LCD Sound System track, and the main drum work, again, these fills are just top-notch. The production style really accentuates the beat, and the vocals really elevate the whole sound of this song. Next up, we've got Human Touch. This track is one of the freshest songs that I've heard about fucking in a while. It's a great little song about how you gotta get your ass up and stop looking at screens for a while and kind of just go get laid. This is 100% a fantastic dance track. Everything about this song hits all the right buttons for an iconic track. I do really love the stripped back production for the verses in this song at the end of the track. It gives a lot of audio depth and range in this song and keeps the sound really, really fresh. The next track is America's Cup. This song is a little bit harder to follow theme-wise, but it does seem to follow a bit of a story of like wrestling with masculinity and how before this big American dick-waving contests with things were maybe a little bit easier to handle, though it may also be interpreted as the opposite, as maybe an embrace of how over-the-top things are and, living for the sake of living big. Though this being an Australian group, there are, very easily could be some context that I'm missing for a proper interpretation here. The song itself does bop pretty hard. Every song on this album does have some incredibly juicy bass work, which I do love, this track being no exception. Up next is Take Me Avalon, I'm Young. This track slows things down a lot more for a very 60s sounding British pop beat that absolutely crushes. I love the blaring guitar hook that jumps out of the mix at you, and I love how much it slingshots you back to like this much calmer sounding track as soon as it's done. Also, the string work on this song is excellent, kind of hitting a bit of a bittersweet symphony key. For Pond, I think this is one of the most relaxed yet funky tracks I've heard from them. Really, really excellent song. The next song is Pink Lunettes, probably the most abstract cut here with a strong looping beat reminiscent of late 80s industrial beats and some lyrics that are intentionally nonsense. This is a great stream of consciousness style F-punk track. The synth on this song also sounds like they're kind of reaching a little bit for that Daft Punk flair too, which ends up working really, really well for them. I think this is a great little track for pumping yourself up and one of the best of the up-tempo tracks on this album. The next track is Czech Locomotive. Lyrically, the song is pretty loose like the last song. Instrumentally, the track comes in with a lot of wet effects looping back and forth as a lead-in for the lyrics, which are grasping for some place to fit in just quite right. They're not really out of place, but it seems a little bit off for a moment just before writing itself, most likely intentionally. I do enjoy how calm this track is for the most part till the midpoint of the song. The song does kind of hit this grooving, repeating segment that does overstay its welcome just a little bit, but it does at least change things up a little bit to keep things somewhat interesting. I think this is one of the weaker songs here, but it really only could use a small amount of tweaking to fix any problems I have with it. Like, it's not like I wouldn't listen to this song, it's just like, of the grouping here, this one is just not as good. The next song is Rambo. This track kind of pokes at people who get pretentious about their pseudo-intellectualism and kind of is a nod to the people, the people who those pompous people would generally think to be dumb or lower standing. I love a lot of the wordplay in this track. Everything is very, very tongue-in-cheek and self-aware. The music itself is great too, with some really excellent sample work painting the back end of this track with some really wonderful color. Next up is Gold Cup Plastic Soul. This track's intro is a slow burn for one of the most down-tempo songs on the album. The beat is very swingy for this song, keeping things nice and simple. Actually, pretty much everything this song does is simple music-wise. The lyrics are alright, definitely a bit more esoteric, but as far as sight goes, this is pretty run-of-the-mill. I don't know if this song really catches my attention as much, kind of like Czech Locomotive. This song could just use a little bit of tweaking and it would be top-notch. The last song on the album is Toast, an homage to the ruling class caricature of a rich man driving the world to extinction by contributing to various problems like pollution, destruction and war, and kind of painting that man raising a toast to the world that he is so responsible in ruining selfishly. It's a pretty great closing track. It's graceful and smooth. I think it really nails the execution, and I think though this may not be my favorite track here, this is a really great album closer. I think one of the things that Pond has done so well here is that they have this fantastic spread and variety, but they don't really lose too much in the way of quality. The writing at some points may become a little bit muddied, but for the most part, the quality of this album stays more consistent than expected for an album with this much range. I do also think that this is a bit of a top-heavy album, but even still, the B-side of this album is still quite fresh despite some of these slower burns. Pond have successfully made another attention-grabbing album for me. 9 gets a solid 7. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been seeing all of your comments, and I've been stoked to get to interact with all of you. I'm really trying my best to keep things coming out steadily for you guys, and I appreciate all of you guys watching so much. Remember to check out my Reverb store and my Instagram. Links for those are in the description. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.